Stars shaken by the Seismic Judge. Prologue. The Seismic Judge and the Wandering King. Fredrick Douglas had not walked the noble quarter in 10 years, and the cobblestones seemed to remember him. His boots pressed into the polished stone with a weight that was more than physical, the kind of weight that came from being both the youngest judge ever elected to the Earth Conglomerate High Council and, paradoxically, the oldest in tenure. He had lived long enough to see generations of elves, pixies, and ogres cycle through the council chambers, while he himself remained steady as bedrock. Today, however, he was not appearing as a hologram, not a flickering projection of authority, but in person, flesh and bone, to obtain something that mattered more to him than politics: seeds. The guard at the embassy gate squinted at him, suspicious. Fred's frank, youthful face did not match the aura of age that clung to him, and the fact that he was human in a quarter dominated by elves made the guard bristle. He followed Fred as he sat down in the waiting hall, muttering under his breath about strange humans in places they don't belong. Fred ignored him, adjusting his coat with the same patience he used when listening to endless council debates. But when the commander of the guard stormed in and caught sight of his subordinate barking at Fred, the scene changed. The commander's eyes widened, recognition dawning. "You fool," he hissed, yanking the guard back. "That's a judge of the High Council." He turned to Fred, bowing slightly, apologizing profusely. Fred waved it off with a smile, amused more than offended. Moments later, the doors opened, and in walked a figure Fred had not seen in centuries: King Bartholomew, the Wood Elf. His ears were long enough to cast shadows, his hair a cascade of golden strands that shimmered like sunlight through leaves. He was a king without a kingdom, his people long ago destroyed by a menace that had itself been defeated, leaving him a relic of a vanished world. Yet he carried himself with the same regal poise as ever, and when his eyes met Fred's, they both broke into grins that erased the years. "Fredrick Douglas," Bartholomew said, his voice rich with nostalgia. "Still walking around like you own the soil beneath your feet?" Fred chuckled. "Well, I do, technically. Geokinetics, remember? The soil listens to me more than the council does." They clasped hands, their grip firm, their laughter echoing in the hall. Bartholomew produced a small satchel, ornate and humming faintly with magic. "Seeds," he said, "sensitive ones. From the woods of Lobos. Someone I know went to great lengths to get these, and I have no idea what they'll grow. They need a keeper who understands growth, patience, and the stubbornness of life itself. I thought of you." Fred's eyes lit up. "You always did know how to tempt me. I'll study them." The woods of Lobos? The ancient wolf god? If the legends are true, these plants may grow only in moonlight. Only under new moons. If legend is to be believed, said the king, scratching his ear. "Now there's a challenge," grinned Fred as he even stopped to take a smell of the seeds. Bartholomew nodded, pleased, and they moved to a side chamber where tea was waiting. They sat, pouring steaming cups, and the years melted away. "You know," Bartholomew said, sipping, "I nearly had that guard tortured for yelling at you." "Old habits." Fred raised an eyebrow, feigning shock. "Do you still do that? I thought back in the day they used to remove your tongue or something." "Well, yes, but then they found later if you remove someone's tongue then they can't speak." "Guards who can't yell were suboptimal," said the king to Fred's laughter. "On Earth, there were regions that would remove limbs for stealing, forgetting you need to work to get enough money to eat, and you can only work half as well with one hand. You used to have something like that in your laws." "I remember," said Fred. Bartholomew laughed as well. No, not since the kingdom fell. But the thought crossed my mind. You humans have a way of making me reconsider my restraint." Fred leaned back, grinning. "Well, I'm glad you didn't. I'd hate to explain to the council why an elf guard suddenly disappeared after calling me strange. Besides, I rather enjoyed the look on his face when his commander realized who I was." They laughed together, the kind of laughter that comes only from shared history. They reminisced about the old days, when wood was real wood and not synthetic composites, when liquor was brewed with patience instead of chemical shortcuts. "Remember that tavern in the northern forests?" Bartholomew asked. "The one with the barrels that leaked more than they poured?" Fred chuckled. "I remember you trying to convince me that the taste was authentic. I nearly broke a tooth on one of those splinters. And yet you drank 3 mugs," Bartholomew teased. "I was young," Fred replied. "And you were persuasive. Still are, apparently, since I'm now holding your magical moon seeds from another dimension." They sipped their tea, trading anecdotes like old soldiers swapping scars. Fred spoke of his farm, the crops he grew and donated, the satisfaction of feeding those who had little. Fred noticed the king pull out a wooden block, talk into it with someone a moment and then replace it in his regal robes. Then, Bartholomew spoke of wandering without a kingdom after it fell, falling to more clandestine work because of his psychic powers. Yet neither man seemed weighed down by sorrow. Their humor buoyed them, their friendship a reminder that even in loss, there was continuity. At one point, Bartholomew leaned in, lowering his voice. "You know, Fred, you haven't aged a day. Still the same stubborn face, still the same eyes that look like they've seen too much and not enough." Fred smirked. "And you still look like you stepped out of a painting. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were trying to impress me." "Always," Bartholomew said, raising his cup. "To old friends, then." Fred raised his own. "To old friends and new seeds." They drank, the warmth of the tea mingling with the warmth of their laughter, and for a moment, the noble quarter seemed less suspicious, less divided. Two very old friends, reunited after a very long time, sat together, sharing humor, memories, and the promise of growth. Chapter 1. What the Cat Dragged In. Fredrick Douglas felt the tremor before he heard it. His geokinetic senses, tuned to the pulse of soil and stone, whispered of a failing life sign on the edge of his farm. He dropped the spade he had been using in his inner garden and closed his eyes, listening to the earth. The heartbeat was faint, erratic, fading. He rushed toward it, his boots pounding the dirt path, his mind already shaping the soil to guide him. There, collapsed near the maintenance duct that drew fresh air from outside, lay a figure unlike any he had seen in years. 7 feet tall, fur matted with blood and dust, clothes torn from combat and flight. A catwoman, a Nekkogato. Her ears twitched weakly, her tail limp, her breathing shallow. Fred's eyes softened. He raised her gently with a thought, the soil itself lifting her into his arms, and carried her to his medical facility. She stirred, golden eyes flickering open, but did not resist. Fred worked quickly, applying nectar from a flower he had engineered himself, its supernatural properties closing wounds and purging infection. He spoke softly as he worked. "You'll be fine, just rest." Her foot, scarred from an older injury, eased under his touch. Finally, he administered a sedative, and she slipped into sleep. When she woke, the scent of food filled the air. A table was set with steaming barbecue chicken, roasted peppers, cheese, and potatoes. A tall glass of vanilla bean ice cream smoothie glistened with condensation. She blinked, suspicious, ears flicking. Fred entered, holding a carrot, smiling. "Eat, I cooked it myself." She hesitated, sniffing, then tasted. Her eyes widened. The seasoned meat melted on her tongue, the peppers burst with flavor, the smoothie was sweet and cold. She devoured it, forgetting her fear for a moment. Then suspicion returned. "Am I your prisoner?" she asked, voice low, wary. Fred shook his head. "No, you're free. But you were injured. I couldn't let you leave like that. Fabricate yourself something to wear, and you may go whenever you wish." She stared at him, testing his honesty. "My name is Nymera Felidae," she said cautiously. Fred nodded. "A beautiful name, Nymera. You owe me nothing. Finish your meal." She fabricated a long sweater and leggings, form-fitting yet modest, and he led her to the door. He handed her a basket of sweet berries and bacon strips. "Have a great day." Shocked, she left, but her heart twisted. She did not want to go. He had made her feel safe, like she belonged. Yet she returned to the streets, searching for transport. Slavers spotted her. An elvish man lunged, guards ambushed. Nymera fought ferociously, claws flashing, killing 3 before escaping. Desperate, she fled back to Fred's farm that night. He welcomed her without hesitation. She broke down, confessing everything. "I was a schoolteacher," she whispered, tears streaking her fur. "On my world, Nekkogato. Pirates attacked. They enslaved me. Collars, electrified cells, torture. They made me pliant, submissive. I hated intimacy with anyone but my mate. I fled when they tried to sell me again. I've been running ever since." Fred listened, his expression grave but kind. "You're safe here. I'll help you contact your people. But you must know, you're far from home. The Earth conglomerate is in contact with your galaxy, but it will take hours for a message to reach the Galactic Alliance." Nymera's eyes widened. "You would help me?" Fred smiled. "Of course." She stayed with him after that, cautious but drawn to his calm strength. His home was vast, built to accommodate beings larger than humans, and she fit comfortably. She explored, curious about everything. His walls were lined with plaques, awards, commendations. She touched them, reading names she did not understand. "What are these?" she asked. Fred joined her, explaining. "Feeding the hungry with my powers. Defeating warlords, pirates. Toppling corrupt governments. Fending off armies. The formation of the conglomerate itself. They gave me medals, certificates. But they're just reminders of what needed to be done. Nymera's ears flicked. You've done all this? You're not just a farmer. Fred chuckled. I am just a farmer. But sometimes, law and order need more than words. She studied him, realizing how capable, intelligent, and influential he was. If she hadn't known better, she would have thought him a king. The way he ate, the way he lived, the quiet dignity in his manner. Yet he remained humble, living alone, tending crops, donating food. You are important, she said softly. But you live like this. Fred shrugged. Titles don't matter. People do. She was captivated. She found herself watching him as he worked at his desk, drafting reports, analyzing soil samples, writing council briefs. Instinctively, she lay on the floor beside him, her voluptuous frame stretched comfortably, her tail curling possessively around his leg. He glanced down, amused. Comfortable? He asked. She purred softly. Yes. You're warm. You don't treat me like property. You don't ask where I'm from, or why I ran. You just let me be. Fred smiled. Everyone deserves dignity, Nymera. She tilted her head, studying him. You're kind. Too kind. I do not understand it. He leaned back, thoughtful. Kindness is the only power worth having. The rest is just noise. They bonded over meals, over stories. Nymera asked endless questions, curious about his life. He told her of battles fought, of councils formed, of laws written to protect the weak. She listened, not understanding all the politics, but sensing the weight of his influence. You've shaped the cosmos, she whispered one evening. And yet you sit here, eating carrots. Fred laughed. Carrots are my favorite snack. She laughed too, her suspicion melting into affection. She admired his calm. She felt compatible with him, drawn to his presence. Her instincts betrayed her, tail wrapping around his leg whenever she lay near him. He never flinched, never mocked, simply accepted her closeness. He never once demanded her to his bed, or pounced on her after forcing her out of a cage and a bath. Days passed. She grew more attentive, watching him work, helping in small ways. She carried baskets, tended crops, asked about his flowers. He explained patiently, teaching her about soil, growth, balance. She listened, fascinated. She even asked about the black seeds in the nursery lab, to which he explained fully. You brush against the divine, she said. You leave the plants in wonder. Even me. Fred looked at her, eyes warm. Life has a way of giving back. I do good things for good people, they help me do by doing good things back. Nymera's heart ached. She had feared rejection, feared her past would make him turn away. But he did not judge. He simply lived, and let her live beside him. She realized she was safe, not just in his home, but in his presence. One night, as he worked late, she lay beside him again, tail curled around his leg. She whispered, almost shy. If I didn't know better, I'd think you were a king. Fred smiled, not looking up from his papers. Kings rule. I serve. She purred, closing her eyes. Then I'd rather have a servant like you than a king. Fred chuckled softly, continuing his work, while Nymera drifted into sleep, her tail still wrapped around him. Chapter 2. A Judge's Fool. Fredrick Douglas had just finished pruning the inner garden when the proximity alarm chimed. He sighed, brushing soil from his hands. Visitors rarely came this far out to his farm, and when they did, it was usually trouble. Nymera Felidae, stretched luxuriously across the floor with her tail wrapped around his leg, perked her ears. Company? She asked, voice wary. Fred nodded. Company. And not the kind that brings pie. The door opened to reveal two figures. A corrupt intergalactic security officer with a crooked badge and an elf official whose robes looked borrowed from a costume shop. The elf's ears were long, but his arrogance was longer. He strode forward, chin high, announcing, We are agents of the High Council. I am Eldrin V. Valen, here to reclaim stolen property of King Bart. That property being the Nekkogato female. Nymera hissed, fur bristling, claws flexing. The officer flinched, hand twitching toward his weapon. Fred raised a hand, calm as ever. Easy, he murmured to Nymera. Let's hear them out. Things can always be resolved with words, said the judge, realizing swiftly that none of them knew who he was. The elf puffed his chest. By the laws of interstellar commerce, Clause 72, subsection 9, all escaped slaves must be returned to their rightful owners. Failure to comply constitutes a diplomatic incident spanning star systems. Fred leaned against the wall. Fascinating. Please, continue. The elf, encouraged, launched into a tirade about property rights, treaties, and the sanctity of contracts. His voice droned like a malfunctioning air vent. Nymera groaned, paw to her temple. "Does he ever stop?" she whispered. Fred smiled faintly. "Give him a chance." Finally, when the elf paused for breath, Fred straightened. "You remind me of a story," he said. His voice carried weight, the kind that silenced rooms. On Earth, long ago, an empire thrived on lies. They raided villages, enslaved the strong, and told their people these captives were willing sacrifices to their god. But their god grew displeased. One day, a celestial warning came, an eclipse. Within decades, the empire collapsed. Its people were enslaved or worse. Lies have a way of devouring those who tell them. The elf blinked, uncertain. "What does that have to do with this?" Fred cut him off. "Everything. You speak of property. And property law makes up almost all of the law." At that moment, the air shimmered. A hologram flickered to life, revealing Eldrin V. Valen, the real elf council member, his presence commanding. Beside him appeared King Bartholomew himself, golden hair gleaming, ears casting regal shadows. Both men looked furious. Eldrin's eyes narrowed. "You dare impersonate me?" His voice was sharp enough to cut steel. "You dishonor the elf clans with your slavery, your deceit, your pathetic attempt at authority." Bartholomew stepped forward, gaze burning. "And you claim to be my agent? My name in your mouth is filth. You are no envoy of mine. You are a pirate, a disgrace, a worm in borrowed robes." The impostor stammered, color draining from his face. I was only lying," Eldrin snapped. "Only enslaving, only humiliating yourself further with every word." Bartholomew smirked. "Tell us, what is your real name? Or shall I reveal it myself?" The elf wilted. "It is Therion." "Therion," Bartholomew repeated, savoring the syllables like poison. "A name that will now be synonymous with shame. You will never leave this planet again. Your assets are revoked. Your ships confiscated. Your fortune dissolved," Eldrin added, "and repurposed. Nymera Felidae will receive one of your ships, along with a substantial sum of your wealth. Consider it restitution for your crimes." Nymera's eyes widened. "Me? A ship? Wealth?" Fred chuckled. "Looks like your hiss was more effective than claws." The impostor's humiliation was delicious. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Nymera, emboldened, stepped forward. "You thought me property. You thought me weak. But look at you now, stripped, exposed, mocked. I should thank you for the entertainment." Fred grinned. "Sharp words, Nymera. I approve." The corrupt officer, realizing the gravity of the mistake, tried to slink away. Eldrin's hologram pinned him with a glare. "And you, complicit. You will answer for your corruption." The officer froze, sweat dripping. "You will arrest this fool and report to your commanding officer, Captain Drummond, within the hour, and he will be expecting you." Bartholomew turned to Fred, his expression softening. "You always did have a way of drawing out the truth, even without lifting a finger." Fred shrugged. "Soil doesn't lie, neither do people, if you listen long enough." Nymera, overwhelmed, looked at Fred with new eyes. He wasn't just a farmer, not just a judge. He was a man who could topple empires with words, who could turn humiliation into justice. She felt her heart twist, tail curling tighter around his leg. Fred noticed, smiled, and took her hand. He kissed it gently, a gesture of respect. "You're free, Nymera, truly free." She swallowed, voice trembling. "Then, will you join me? On my journey home?" Fred met her gaze, steady and kind. "Yes, wherever you go, I'll go." The impostor groaned, still kneeling in disgrace. Nymera glanced at him one last time. "Enjoy your new life, Therion. May it be as empty as your words." Fred and Nymera watched the bewildered security officers join the gathering ones outside, sirens trailing behind them. Outside, Nymera leaned against Fred, her frame tall and voluptuous, leaning down into him as he held her from being, and her fur lightly warmed between them body. Her huge alien body was denser than a human's, yes, yet softened by vulnerability and trust. "You make me feel safe," she whispered. "Like I belong." Fred squeezed her paw as his fingers mingled between her soft pads. "You do." And with that, their journey together truly began. Chapter 3. The War of Rats. Fredrick Douglas sat at the long table aboard the repurposed pirate vessel, his hands folded neatly as Nymera Felidae leaned forward, her golden eyes glowing in the dim light. She had been quiet for some time, tail twitching and not possessively wrapped around the judge. Her ears flicking as though she were weighing whether to speak, and was nervous about what to say. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice low but steady. "My people, when we choose a mate, it is not casual. Sensuality is bound to trust, to bond. It is freely given, but only when demanded without question. That is our way. My captivity twisted that instinct, made it ache for connection, but without a bond I cannot bring myself to be physical. I need trust, Fred. I need to know I belong. I need to choose and be chosen. Fred listened, his expression calm, his eyes kind. He did not interrupt, did not rush her. He simply nodded, acknowledging the weight of her words. Then trust will come, he said softly. Bond will come. You are not alone anymore. Nymera's tail whipped and curled around his leg, instinctive, protective, and she closed her eyes, comforted by his words. The ship's communication array suddenly lit up, breaking the moment. Fred rose, activating the console. A holographic projection shimmered into existence, revealing Lady Calcine, of House Calcine, her face stern, her voice urgent. Fredrick Douglas, she said, I regret to inform you that Nekkogato has been invaded. Its moons have been glassed. Survivors flee to Calith Moonfang's werewolf domain, clinging to mining colonies along the edge of her territory. The Rat Fink Empire presses them hard. Worse still, the Nekkogato prince has been captured. He is to be executed on Germis, the Rat Fink homeworld. Nymera gasped, her claws digging into the table. No, my people, my prince? Her voice broke, anguish flooding her. Fred's jaw tightened. Where is he being held? Lady Calcine's eyes softened. On Germis. I cannot spare forces. Earth Ornaria burns with its own fires, and the Galactic Alliance is worn thin. I am sorry. Fred straightened, his voice firm. Then I will intervene myself. Nymera stared at him, stunned. You're not a fighter. Your power is soft. Fred's lips curved into a faint smile. I like that you truly believe that. But in the old days I could crack an entire planet apart. Lady Calcine studied him, then nodded. I thank you, Fredrick. Your involvement may turn the tide. I will send what aid I can, though I may not come myself. The transmission ended, leaving silence in its wake. Nymera touched Fred's arm, trembling. You would risk yourself, for us, for me? Fred met her gaze. They used to call me the Seismic Judge. I'm warning you now, Nymera, you've seen only one side of me. When we get to the Rat Fink's homeworld, you're going to see something new. The ship descended upon Germis, its atmosphere thick with smoke, its cities bristling with fortifications. Fred and Nymera walked into the Rat King's throne chamber, the Nekkogato prince bound nearby, guards flanking the dais. The Rat King sneered, his whiskers twitching. You dare come here, human filth and Nekkogato trash? You dare demand the release of this feline prince? He will die, as will his people, as will you. The Rat Fink Empire bows to no one. Fred's voice was calm, measured. Release him. End this war before it spreads. Take on the brunt of the punishment so your people aren't made to suffer, and you planet can still prosper. The Rat King laughed, a harsh, grating sound. You are no warrior, no king, you bring words, not armies. What can you do? Fred closed his eyes, reaching into the soil beneath Germis. His geokinetic power reaching through the entire world's surface like a great godlike hand pressing diligently through a mound of soil. The planet shuddered, the throne chamber trembled, cracks splitting the marble floor. Outside, towers swayed, mountains groaned. The Rat King staggered, clutching his throne. What is this? Fred opened his eyes, calm as ever. I bring no army because an army would be at risk fighting anywhere around me. I bring the power of a world with me. And worlds do not forgive when they are betrayed. The chamber shook harder, the very core of Germis quaking under Fred's will. He could destabilize the planet, destroy it entirely, if he chose. The Rat King paled, realizing the truth. Elite guards rushed forward, blades drawn, but before they could strike, another figure appeared, Glenn Calcine, son of Lady Calcine, his electrokinetic power sending him gleaming along the open throne room. He grinned at Fred. Still shaking worlds, Your Honor? Fred inclined his head. Still lighting them up, Glenn? Glenn laughed, charging into battle. The elite guards met him head-on, but Glenn was a storm, arcs of lightning ripping through armor and flesh in an instant, bodies flashing and flying into walls and across the floor. When the bulk of the guards managed to leap at him, his movements suspended space a moment, so fast did he flip and kick the lead armored Rat Fink out of his way, and spray the full 2 ranks of following soldiers with lighting, that the oncoming guard from the far walls almost faltered at the sight. One by one, the guards fell, slain by his skill. Nymera darted forward, claws flashing and ripping at the lone guard stationed with the Nekkogato royal, freeing the prince from his bonds. The young Nekkogato snarled, rage burning in his eyes as more rat fink guards stormed in their red and copper armor. What followed was a bloodbath, as Fred watched the slaughter, projecting bolts of powerful energy like a gun blast through his fingertips, ripping apart the internal organs of each warrior in turn in a single blast. The Rat King's biggest mistake was not torturing or starving the Nekkogato prince first. His fury was even greater than Nymera's as he torn through 4 guards at once to get to the center of the throne room after being released from his bonds. He lunged at the Rat King, who successfully blocked a swift, power kick with his armored gauntlet, but a turning backhand sent metal-rending claws raking across his face, neck and chest, leaving deep scars and lips split open. The Rat King screamed, stumbling back, humiliated, as a return claw ripped his ear and the flesh on the side of cheek and neck, flooring him. The prince inhumanly hobbled to his feet, one hand holding the welling blood in his face and neck, the other holding up to the prince, who glared down at him. Fred's voice rang out, steady and commanding. "Surrender. Expose your deeds, or Jermis will crumble beneath you." The Rat King, bleeding, broken, realized he had no choice. He bowed his head. "We surrender." The Rat Fink Empire was forced to yield, its crimes laid bare. The Galactic Alliance suspended the Rat Fink race from its halls. Reparations and judgment were waiting for the official responsible for the near genocide. The sanctions that followed, overseen by Judge Fredrick himself, left Jermis in literal ruins, crippling its commerce, its trade, forcing nearly half its people into exile in the uncharted reaches between galaxies, and the rest to work and repay the damage done by the rest. Nymera stood beside Fred, her tail wrapped tightly around his leg, her eyes shining with awe. "You shook a world, for me," she whispered. "You saved my prince. You saved my people." Fred looked at her, his expression humble. "You saved the prince, I only watched." Glenn clapped Fred on the shoulder, grinning. "I thought you were going to crack the planet open. I could tell it came close to it, more than you'll admit. I'm glad to fight beside you again." Fred smiled faintly. "And I'm glad you still sling lightning better than anyone. Give my regards to your mother." The Nekkogato prince, furious but alive, bowed deeply to Fred and Nymera. "You have saved us, and you have brought justice and stability upon our enemies and our people. We will remember this." Nymera's heart swelled, pride and relief flooding her. She turned to Fred, her voice trembling as she purred for the first time in his ear. A sound indicating a promise he could directly feel she was making. "You are mine now." Fred shook his head gently. "I was yours before." As Jermis trembled under the weight of surrender, as the Rat Fink Empire crumbled into exile, Fred and Nymera stood together, bound by trust, by bond, by the promise of their connection, the peaceful life they held together. She knew Fredrick Douglas was a force of nature, a man who could topple empires without lifting a claw. And Nymera knew something else too, her tail curled around him, her heart bound to his. Epilogue. Sealing the bond. Fredrick Douglas stood on the balcony of the Nekkogato capital, watching the stars shimmer above the restored city. Glenn Calcine had departed after ensuring the transition was peaceful, leaving Fred and Nymera Felidae to linger in the quiet aftermath. The people were rebuilding, the prince scarred but alive, and the Rat Fink Empire scattered nearly to the dust or buried under sanctions and taxes that would keep them under thumb for decades. Yet Nymera's heart was restless. She turned to Fred, her tall, voluptuous frame silhouetted against the glow of lanterns. "I cannot stay," she said softly. "This is my home, but I do not belong here anymore. I want to go with you. Back to the conglomerate." Fred studied her, then nodded. "Then come." On her gifted ship, they shared dinner together, the table filled with Fred's careful cooking. Nymera ate slowly, her golden eyes fixed on him, her tail twitching with nerves and not across his leg under the table. When the plates were cleared, she remained seated, her ears lowered, her voice trembling. "Fred, I must tell you something. I feared rejection. I feared you will see me as dirty, too tall, too much used. I feared you would want a human mate. I disgusted myself for what was done to me, for the times I was forced to mate without a bond. I longed for a bond, but I fear no man would ever find me worthy." Her words spilled out, raw and vulnerable, her claws flexing against the table as though she might tear it apart to hide her shame. Fred reached across, taking her hand gently. "Nymera, you are not dirty. You are not too much. You are you, and that is enough. Only you can find yourself worthy." She swallowed hard, tears glistening in her fur. "Then, be my mate. Pledge yourself to me, for life." Fred's eyes softened, and he nodded. "I've been alive a long time. I've loved before, known peace, but I've always had a distraction. My work is my life. But maybe, you can be my new distraction, my new peace." You made me feel at ease the moment I saw you, granted you were scuffed up a bit. The moment hung between them, heavy with relief and joy. Nymera's ears flicked, her tail curled tight, and then, with sudden boldness, she stripped her clothes away, standing tall and unashamed before she stepped over to him from across the table, their meal forgotten. Fred blinked, startled. Now Nymera, wait. She laughed, a low, throaty sound. No more waiting. We seal our bond now. She snatched him up with surprising strength, ignoring his protests. I'm not ready, he tried, but she silenced him with a grin. I am ready, he sputtered, trying again. This isn't proper. She pressed her forehead to his as she affectionately purred and carried him along the small lounge to the huge bedchamber adjoined on the other side. Her naked form a graceful merging of raw animal muscle, dark fur bristling at her cheeks and back, and pink, soft animal flesh that warmed his body as she held him dearly and carried him closer to the bed. It is proper. We are mates. He chuckled despite himself, her humor disarming him. You're relentless. She purred. Exactly. You are mine. This time she said it with a deeper, more resonant tone as she placed him on the bed, gently and stretched her arms and back over him, the length of her alien feline body in full display before Fred for the first time before she climbed on top of him. Their bond sealed not in ceremony but in laughter, in discovery, in the clash of his soft skin against her dark fur. It was sensual, yes, but more than that, it was endearing, hilarious, deeply human and deeply feline. She teased him mercilessly, giving excuses for every protest he made, turning his seriousness into joy. He found himself laughing, truly laughing, as she pulled him close, held him, begged him to just keep going, as they realized together that they were more compatible than either had dared hope. Nymera whispered against him when it was over, voice trembling with relief and release as her tail wrapped itself processively around Fred's tail. Mine. The night became a moment of trust, of intimacy, of hope. They discovered each other not just in touch but in spirit, realizing that their differences, his human softness, her feline strength, were not barriers but bridges. When at last they awoke, without rising, they chose to lay together, breathless and silent. A new kind of calm rippled between them as Nymera curled her tail around him, purring deep in her chest. See? Compatible, she teased. Fred smiled, stroking her fur. Mine, he whispered. She closed her eyes, content, her fears dissolved. For the first time in her long, tortured life, she felt safe, bonded, loved. And Fred, the judge who had carried the weight of worlds, found himself lighter than ever, bound to her in a way no council, no empire, no award could match. And as the ship sailed back toward the conglomerate, they lay together, knowing that whatever awaited them, they would face it as one.